Hello Cowboys fans, who also had their Sunday ruined by yet another disastrous performance from Dak Prescott and company. Today, we will talk about this terrible chapter in our glorious history. How much longer do we have to put up with these indifferent players and this coaching staff on our team? How much longer, Mike Zimmer? How much longer, Mike McCarthy? And you, Dak, when will you step up and take on the role of a true leader? Today, we'll have some answers and discuss this and much more. So before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to help us reach our goal of 12,000 subscribers and give this video a like. Go Cowboys! First of all, I ask you, is there any way that Jerry Jones and his losing team can lead us to another Super Bowl victory? Cowboys Nation deserves better than this. We are the greatest, and we deserve players and a coaching staff that honor our history. Honestly, I can't stand going through so many humiliations anymore. Let's get into it. It's a frustrating week for Cowboys Nation as we deal with the fallout from yet another humiliating home loss. This time, a brutal 47-9 defeat at the hands of the Detroit Lions. The spotlight is glaring brighter than ever on head coach Mike McCarthy, and rightfully so. Many fans and analysts are calling for his dismissal, and frankly, it's hard to argue with that sentiment. This is not an overreaction. It's a fair and measured response to what we've witnessed this season. If you're in the camp that believes McCarthy has to go, I completely understand. In fact, I was calling for his firing back in January. But there's a twist here. McCarthy has been set up for failure, and that's largely an ownership issue. The decision to keep McCarthy as a lame duck coach heading into the final year of his contract without significant roster improvements was a mistake. The front office essentially said, let's run it back, but with a worse roster. Who here, in all honesty, feels confident that this team will right the ship, not just sneak into the playoffs as a 7th seed, but actually contend when it matters most in January? Let's be real. The current roster construction does not inspire confidence. Sure, they might make the playoffs, but do we truly believe this team can beat a squad like the Lions or the Eagles in January? The coaching staff has repeatedly shown that they can't get the most out of the talent they have. Even if they did, I'm not convinced it would be enough to compete at the highest level. But the fact is, they aren't maximizing anything right now. Not the roster, not the talent, and certainly not the game plans. Do you have hope that this Cowboys team can turn things around and make a deep playoff run? Let me know in the comments. If you're looking for potential replacements for Mike McCarthy, you're not alone. We're planning to dive into that in our live show later today, so make sure you tune in. If you want that McCarthy replacement segment, help us out by sharing this video. It's the fastest way to get the conversation rolling. It's obvious that McCarthy is on borrowed time. This entire situation smells of a dead man walking. He's been set up to fail, and now he's fully embracing the downfall. Is Jerry Jones finally ready to make a mid-season move? One thing that's becoming increasingly likely is that Jerry Jones might actually pull the trigger on a mid-season coaching change. If the Cowboys come out of the bye week and get blown out by the San Francisco 49ers, it wouldn't be shocking to see Jerry finally make a move. The leash is short, and the patience is running thin. Do you think the Cowboys will fire Mike McCarthy mid-season? Vote now. Y for yes, N for no, in the comments.
Let Brian Schottenheimer call the plays. Another popular sentiment is that maybe McCarthy should stop calling the plays and hand that responsibility to offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. I get the logic. McCarthy hasn't been good enough, and players have been voicing frustrations about practice and preparation. But let's be real, this idea, while appealing, is still an overreaction. Why? Because there's no way McCarthy will give up play-calling duties. From his perspective, this is his ship, and if it's going down, he's going to be at the helm when it sinks. The reality is, McCarthy's offensive schemes feel outdated, like something straight out of the early 2000s. It's no coincidence that the offenses run by Aaron Rodgers and McCarthy back in the day look eerily similar to what we're seeing now. But McCarthy is set in his ways. He knows his job is on the line, and if he's going to get fired, he's determined to go out on his own terms. Will Jerry make the bold move? As we approach the middle of the season, the question looms. Is Jerry Jones ready to make a bold move and fire McCarthy mid-season? Historically, Jerry has been loyal to his coaches, almost to a fault. But the pressure is mounting. Fans are fed up, and this latest loss to Detroit might just be the breaking point. With the bye week giving the team a brief moment to regroup, this could be Jerry's best chance to hit the reset button. But will he? If your reaction is to say it's time to let him go, you're not overreacting. In fact, you're right. McCarthy should have been fired last January, but ownership set him up for failure, and now we're seeing the consequences. The Cowboys entered the season with McCarthy as a lame duck coach in the final year of his contract, and instead of improving the roster, they essentially ran it back with the same group, except somehow it's even worse. Who here in the comments feels optimistic about the Cowboys turning this around? Does anyone believe they're going to not only back their way into the playoffs, but also make a deep run in January? I don't think this roster as it stands is good enough to compete with teams like the Lions in meaningful games, let alone go the distance. The coaching staff has consistently failed to get the most out of this group, and even if they did, the ceiling still wouldn't be high enough. So, if you want to see a video later today with potential Mike McCarthy replacements, help us out by sharing this video. Let's be real. This situation feels like a sinking ship. McCarthy was set up to fail, and now he's embracing that failure. It's no longer a question of if he gets fired, but when. Even if they somehow scrape together 11 wins, which feels impossible right now, the way they've gotten to this point does not inspire confidence. There's been no consistency, just moments of brilliance followed by inexplicable collapses. And if things keep going like this, Jerry Jones might just pull the trigger and make a change mid-season, especially if they get blown out after the bye against the 49ers. So, will the Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy mid-season? Let me know in the comments. Type Y for yes and N for no. Fire Mike as play caller. This is where the overreactions start. Some might suggest taking the play-calling duties away from McCarthy and giving them to Brian Schottenheimer. While that might sound logical, especially since McCarthy's offense has been underwhelming, I don't see McCarthy handing over the reins. He knows his job is on the line, and he's going down with the ship. Sure, the offense looks outdated, but this is the hill McCarthy has chosen to die on. Fire Mike Zimmer. I understand why fans are frustrated with the defense, but firing Mike Zimmer feels like an overreaction. Yes, the defense has struggled, and yes, Zimmer needs to be better, but the injuries are piling up. Zimmer can't make players tackle. That's on execution. While I'm not giving him a free pass, I think the offensive performance was worse. This is not to say Zimmer is the solution either, but I'm more inclined to blame the offense for the overall failure right now. So, between the offense and the defense, what do you think is the bigger issue? Type O for offense and D for defense in the comments. The players are not focused now. This isn't an overreaction at all. It's a real issue. Every time the Cowboys lose, we hear the same thing from the players. They weren't focused enough, practice wasn't sharp enough, or they didn't pay attention to the details. Whether it's Dak Prescott, Jordan Lewis, Tank Lawrence, or Micah Parsons, the message has been the same all season. And frankly, I'm tired of it. This is a coaching problem. If your players aren't focused, that's on the coaching staff to fix. And it's been an ongoing issue for years. Players admitting they're not locked in during practice reflects poorly on McCarthy and his staff. You have to start holding people accountable. Start benching players, even if it's a star like Donovan Wilson. This team needs a wake-up call, and if the same message is falling on deaf ears, something has to change. Ownership is the root of the problem. This might be the biggest truth bomb of all, and it's not an overreaction in the slightest. Everything we're seeing on the field is a direct result of the Jones family, Jerry and Stephen Jones. Every complaint you have right now about the Cowboys traces back to ownership. Why? Because this is what happens when you refuse to spend money in free agency and fail to make meaningful improvements to the roster. After last year's playoff disaster, the ownership didn't make the necessary changes. Nobody got fired, and the team actually got worse. This isn't about the coaching staff alone. This is about the culture of complacency that starts at the top. The Cowboys are more concerned with ticket sales and filling AT&T Stadium than building a winning football team. So if you're frustrated, direct your anger at the Jones family. They've allowed this culture rot to persist, and until they're willing to admit their mistakes and pass more power to the football minds in the organization, nothing is going to change. Let's make this clear. Ownership is to blame. Type FJB in the comments if you're as frustrated with the Jones family as I am. If you're ready for a change, hit that subscribe button because we're bringing you Cowboys content, whether it's positive or critical. Join us as we navigate this mess of a season and hope for better days ahead.